Let's get sweaty.
Hey guys, welcome to Shenmue Dojo video. Today's video I'm going to be looking at Shenmue 4, the current state of play, what we know about it, what we don't know about it, and then give some sort of closing thoughts around hopefully where we end up in 2024. As I say, a lot of this is speculation, but there's also quite a large amount of information out there on the internet. You just need to know where to go and find it. I'm going to cover story elements of Shenmue 4, some of the gameplay, some of the systems and appearance, ask the question around, is it in development, is it not, and what might be the steps in order to get it moving in development. I'm going to talk about a couple of the rumours that were floating around last year, very, very briefly, before giving them some very sort of short closing thoughts around everything together and where we end up potentially with Shenmue 4. So buckle up, guys. It could be quite a long video, but we'll see how we go. Now, the first element that I want to talk about is the story of Shenmue 4. As we know, Shenmue 3 covered chapter cards 5 and 6, which theoretically means that Shenmue 4 has to cover potentially all of them, so 7 to 11. Some might drop out. Or they could theoretically make a Shenmue 5 and then say to Shenmue 4, right, you cover 7, 8 and 9 maybe, and then Shenmue 5 does the rest. But I want to pull the chapter tiles up just so we can have a sort of quick talk about them and what's there at the moment. So as I said, Shenmue 3 covers chapter tiles 5 and 6. So you can see 5 in the top right here, 6 is in the bottom left. Then you've got the rest that aren't around yet, obviously, on the right hand side here. So looking at these tiles, it does beg question around the potential story for Shenmue 4, even 5, where Ryo's training may end up, whether we may see a death or something, I don't know. But it intimates here that this chapter card here, chapter card 7, which is available in high res on our website, looks like the Cliff Temple. Ryo is fighting some sort of Shaolin monk, and then you've got Niaosun, Landy, and Shenhua there. Looks like Zimming on the bottom right, potentially. And then another character just there who I'm unsure of. Then the next chapter card, it seems that you could have either one of the masters in the background. That could also be Tente. You've then got what are potentially 4 Grand Masters for all we know. All the 4 leaders of the Chi Men, we don't really know at this point on those mountaintops. We've then got what looks like more of a training arc here. Next to that one, we have the eyes of somebody, I'm not quite sure who, whether that could be Landy, whether that could be somebody else, could be Zimming, and then Ryo holding a body here. I'm going to come on to that point in a minute. And then at the end here, we've got the bandana, Shenhua and Jiwing are there. That bandana, again, I'm going to come on to a little bit. But remember, this design is pre-Ryo. This was all done as Akira. But we know that Shenmue loosely follows these chapter cards. Things have been moved around, dropped, etc. as time's gone on. But I think we're not a million miles away in terms of what we're going to be getting by analysing those cards in great detail. And it's something that James and I have done at length already. So then coming to the actual sort of story elements itself, I would urge everybody to go and watch Shenmue Masters interviews, I think from 2014. I will put the link below for everybody so you can check those out, where it talks about the Shenmue story in some quite, almost spoilery detail is the way I would describe some of those interviews. And he talks about chapter cards potentially being moved, cut, etc. And it's all in there as well from Yu Suzuki. And it's a really good interview section. So go and check those out if you haven't done so already. In terms of main story elements, Zimming and Jiwing, I think that's something that's blatant and that's going to happen in Shenmue 4. It's been teased for ages. We have the comics of Zimming, obviously, from Shenmue 2. Hopefully that materialises, and then hopefully we get some sort of resolution to that story. Could Zimming train Ryo? Does Ryo fight Zimming? How does Jiwing fit into all of this as well? There's a plethora of story there that could really sort of kick things off. And then you've got to take into account, obviously, Shenhua and what her development will be. Is she going to get further embroiled with the prophecy? Are we going to see some of the Shenmue Online stuff, potentially, where she magics into the Phoenix? I don't know. I maintain that stuff was canon at the time. So is it still canon now? I don't know. But again, that's exciting to think about. Ren, I've maintained this, and I will say this till I'm blue in the face. I think he will die. I think he will either betray Ryo and then at the last minute come back, or or Ryo's actions would cause Ren to die, and therefore it then puts Ryo into this sort of spiral of essentially chasing revenge, what it does to those around you. Remember that the whole thing Awao said at the start, keep friends and those you love close to you. Well, if Ryo's actions endanger someone and get somebody killed, he's going to have to evaluate massively his actions and how he moves forward to make sure that doesn't happen again. But he also potentially has to not avenge Ren, but carry his death and use that as a way to better himself and realise the mistakes he's made. Almost the ultimate price. The only worst thing that can happen is he gets himself killed. So that's really, really exciting to see this potentially play out in a Shenmue 4. As I say, this is all speculation. I'm just sort of putting the dots together and hoping that it's somewhere in the ballpark. The other thing with Shenmue 4 is it has to open up, I think, with a massive deal. Get people hooked in nice and early. Get people hooked in with a major plot point. That could be anything. It could be a massive fight. It could be a character death. Whatever it is, it needs to set the scene, calm everything down, and then you build up to the big ending that Shenmue games typically do very, very well, especially Shenmue 2, taking out the Guilin section, of course, which is almost its own game in itself in some respects. So that's the story. There's lots out there around the Shenmue story. Go and check out all the material that's out there, and what theories you might have. Let us know. I'm happy to pick some of those up as we go. Coming on to gameplay. There's not a huge amount known about the gameplay element around a potential Shenmue 4. We do know that Yu Suzuki has talked about modernising it a bit to be more accessible, to allow a more story-focused experience for some. I can understand that, and I think gamers these days would like something like that. I've maintained that you could potentially have a Shenmue mode and a story-driven mode, or you make the gameplay built in such a way that you can either play it in the classical way, or you can streamline it and skip bits and pieces to make sure that people don't, for want of a better expression, get bored. Dreams of Saturn actually, funnily enough, did this really, really well in the recent updates, where you could play the game as you like, going around doing all the bits and pieces, hunting around all the nooks and crannies in true Shenmue fashion. Or you could, it's streamlined, you essentially go from A to B to C, skip some of the bits at the end, get all the cutscenes and play it in an hour and a half. If you have that sort of balance within Shenmue 4, I think that could work really, really well. One thing that Yu Suzuki has talked about into hopefully entice new people in is incorporating playable flashbacks into the game. That makes a lot of sense. It makes massive sense because then you're not forcing people to watch a digest video, which could be quite long. And then secondly, it could also sort of fade away a little bit with the digest video. People forget it. Whereas if you play it in game, I think people then build more of affiliation to it, and then it sort of sets people up to get enthralled with the story going forward. One real good example could be if you meet Zimming, you get the flashbacks to Zhuing, meeting her, counter elbow assault, the pendant, all of that. That's one example of a playable flashback. Another could be, for example, that Ryo's thinking about his actions, how he's endangered people. Well, what about Guizhang and his leg in the harbour in Shenmue 1? Could you not replay that section, for example, very briefly, and then get that affiliation there as well? Just two examples that could work really, really well if done right in the playable flashback side of things. On top of that, he's talked about maybe using smaller areas but more detailed areas. I mean, that would fit the Shenmue 1 mold, I guess, in terms of the way things could look. I'm definitely not against that at all. As long as it's done really, really well and can contain the story as it needs to. I'm all for something like that, and that'd be really cool to have a really small, intricately detailed area in the Shenmue fashion. Again, is there a cost implication to that? I don't know. But it's definitely something that I would be on board for. He was also talked about he's learnt the lessons from Shenmue 3. We know that. I mean, I've talked about the story, and Shenmue 4 absolutely must smash the story. If it doesn't, I think we're then in tricky waters, but I won't go too much into that here. He's talked about the throws and making a comeback within the fighting system, polishing that up. I think that would happen through a natural development cycle anyway, and I'm going to come on to that later. But having throws come back in would make sense, seeing as Ryo's martial art is based upon jiu-jitsu itself. Makes absolute sense. One thing that really gave me confidence, and I might be reaching a little bit here, is that he's talked about in his end-of-year message fairly recently with Famitsu, and I did a video on this as well, that he wants to use screenwriters in collaboration, also musicians in collaboration with his future projects. This would be brilliant for Shenmue 4 because it would allow Yu Suzuki, the team at WiseNet, to focus on honing in that development, getting the development, the systems, etc. spot on for Shenmue 4 while the story is mapped out, and then they can implement that hopefully really, really well. And then I would love it if people with that expertise could come in and give us a story on a par with Shenmue 2. I think that expertise would help in abundance. It would take pressure off Yu Suzuki, and I think it would give the community confidence to actually, with all due respect to the team who wrote the story for Shenmue 3, and I maintain I think it was probably a basic outline of what was planned years and years ago. It would give, I think, an area of expertise and real focus and deserved focus on the story. That's not to say people at WiseNet can't do that. I just think they'd be too thinly spread to give it the time and the attention that I think it deserves. So that's why I think going for screenwriters could be a really, really good idea. Then we come on to the systems and appearance. Now, much like the gameplay, we don't know too much about it. But that doesn't mean I can't speculate. The sensible money here, straight up, would be on that they use the Shenmue 3 engine/systems because a massive amount of chunk of time and money was spent getting that going. And to be fair, most of it worked well. Yes, some of the animations are a bit Yankee and all the rest of it, or that there's certain elements within that system that didn't quite work and need some further polish. But with the Shenmue 4, they could polish that. One example of that is the fighting system. As I said, it's an okay system. I quite like it. I think it's not a million miles away from being a really good fighting system. It has more depth to it than people realise. If you give it the time, you can put some nice combos together and it works really, really well. But you could polish that fighting system, add the throws in, and make that a real impactful system. Obviously, Sega got involved, give us a Virtua Fighter engine. I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be fantastic if it did. On top of that, I think then you could also remove the stamina system. I get why it was put in. I don't think it serves much of a purpose. You just make some natural tweaks and improvements to the overall systems that are out there already. Don't go mad with your mini games. And I think you're probably there with Shenmue 4. The other benefit, I think, is obviously it was built in Unreal. Unreal 5 here could be a real benefit here. It streamlines more than Unreal 4 does. Now, I'm no expert in Unreal, so I could be talking complete and utter crap. But if I am, let me know. But it could streamline things. It allows developers to tools like MetaHumans, which is fantastic building NPCs. Now, would it be the right art style for Shenmue? I don't know. But it's a system or something they could use. The visuals in Unreal 5 are fantastic and look to be easily accessible to developers at the top end, but also in the indie games as well. So if you put Shenmue 4 or the Shenmue 3 engine into that system, into Unreal 5, use some of the tricks, etc. in there, and build your game in there, you're naturally going to get a sort of visual bump anyway. I'm quite happy with the visual style in Shenmue 3. The environments are fantastic. Improve some of the character models, make some of those use of some of those tricks in Unreal 5, and I don't think you're going to be miles away. One thing that does need overhauling, though, I'm sorry to say, is the menus and the user interface. For want of a better expression, it's the same in Air Twist. It's not particularly intuitive. It can be quite clunky to move around the menu system, and it's something that I think just needs refining. Maybe looking at modern games and how they design their menu systems and take some tricks from there. It's not terrible by any stretch of the imagination, and it's fairly okay to get used to, but it feels clunky. It needs streamlining, and it needs to be more modern in terms of the way it's presented and the sensibilities that modern gamers are used to. So it's just, again, a bugbear, not a big one, but it's something that could be put in mind, I guess, going forward. Now we're coming into some of the really tricky questions here. So is it in development? Well, unfortunately, the likely answer is probably not. Now, I'm going to pull up for you guys a tweet from Cedric Biscay. Now, I've shown this before, but I'm going to show it again for everybody. So here's the tweet, guys. So it was asked around sort of crowdfunding and whether Shenmue 4 could go to crowdfunding. Now, Cedric said it's complicated to do so, but essentially they've got the Shenmue 4 pitching material at the early stage, and they still hope that they can do the game. Now, at the time, this obviously sent some shockwaves through the community. There was a lot of worry around something like that. I completely understand that. How far those picture materials are, I don't know. Have they worked on them since? Bearing in mind, Cedric talked to me about this in 2020. You would think that even if the game isn't in full development, those picture materials have been improved, bettered, so then it gives a publisher potentially a question to answer, like, am I willing to fund this or not? You'd think they'd keep working on something like that, even if it's very, very quietly, just to make sure that what they're pitching is the best that they can possibly pitch. It makes sense. Now, I don't know what discussions have happened behind the scenes. It's anybody's guess around Shenmue 4 at this point, but they have to find a position, and it's very, very tricky for development of Shenmue 4 and Shenmue in general, and I'll come on to a little bit why in a minute, that they have to find, essentially, a balance between business sense and what is realistic in terms of what they can get in terms of funding for the market, and also from a creative standpoint, because I appreciate Yu Suzuki is creative, Shenmue is his baby, and he wants to do the absolute best that he can, and I don't fault him for that, because I want the best for Shenmue as well. I'm trying to come at this from an objective point of view here, in that where's the line between being too ambitious, which is then restricting the ability to get the game made, but also what point do you say, I can't accept this because it's not going to get anywhere near the creative vision that I want? Shenmue, unfortunately, doesn't have the market to be pioneering anymore at the moment. It's not saying that it couldn't, and Shenmue 0 could potentially go that way if it was successful, made, etc. I don't know. But at the moment, it doesn't have the market for it. If you go back to our Shenmue v Yakuza podcast, must be about a year ago now, we talked about the sales of the series and compared them. Shenmue, as a series, has around 500,000 sales on average per entry release. So that's 500,000 people technically who could pick that up, which is great. It's not a small market, but it's not a massive market either. It's tricky with a game like Shenmue, because a game like Shenmue requires a lot of resource to make it in terms of the open world. So are they going to have to make sacrifices within the game systems to get it made? I don't know. Or do they need to monetize that 500,000 better in terms of merchandising and other collaborations to try and potentially make more money and therefore get more revenue towards the game? I don't know. I've talked about going digital only, which then means that a lot more of the revenue is split between the publisher and WiseNet, as well as the host taking obviously their cut from it. That might work. I don't know. Could a smaller game or episodic work to get 4 made? I don't know, because episodic or a smaller game would need a smaller outlay, which then de-risks some of this, which then could make a Shenmue 4 or episode, whatever you want to call it, viable. I don't know. I'm no games development expert. I'm no games industry expert. I'm just spitballing ideas here. But there has to be somewhere a middle ground for this to happen. Surely there has to be. And then I sort of come on to SEGA and the new era, new energy stuff, which, let's be bloody honest about this, guys, it is fantastic to see these IPs back. Jet Set Radio, as much as I think Shenmue is probably more recognisable and certainly has more overall sales between all its releases and Jet Set Radio, that fandom have been waiting for a long bloody time to get that game made. Crazy Taxi obviously sold quite well over its entries. Shinobi Golden Axe, with all greatest respect in the world, I don't know how many people were shouting about something like that. It might be something I've missed, but it's, again, if I have, call me out, I could be wrong. And then Streets of Rage obviously had a really successful revival with Streets of Rage 4. But with certainly 3 out of those 5 titles, Sega have found a way, or whatever, to make those games in a way that makes a sense from a business standpoint, but looks to have retained, from what I can see, the charm and the feel of those games. So why can't Shenmue be part of that, considering I would put it as an IP easily is recognisable within those, if not slightly more? So why couldn't potentially Sega do that as well with Shenmue and find us a way to get a Shenmue 4 that is viable, but also allows Yu Suzuki WiseNet to get the creative spin that they want within reason? As I said, it's Yu Suzuki's baby, and I completely respect what he wants to do with it. I'm just looking at this from a devil's advocate point of view, that essentially there has to be a middle ground. I don't think we're in a position where we can be demanding that Shenmue is groundbreaking anymore, that it's going to command a massive, massive budget of $30 million. You might get $20 million, I don't know. But you're going to struggle to get more than the budget for Shenmue 3, in my opinion. But, as I said, You use the 3 engine, you cut some of the costs down, and you may not need a bigger budget or as big a budget from Shenmue 3 to make a Shenmue 4. There has to be a middle ground, guys. I don't know where it lies, but let's, tweet Sega, remind them about Shenmue, and see if we can maybe force their arm a little bit. I don't know. Anyway, so moving away from that, I've gone on about that for quite a while. I just want to pick up on a couple of the rumours that were kicking around. There was the 4chan rumour about Shenmue 4 being made with Sega, which is quite ironic now, because I'm still maintaining that rumour is likely 99% bullshit. But with the whole New Era stuff coming from Sega, there's a slight glimmer in my head that goes, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't. But then it also talks about it being made in Shanghai, taking place in Shanghai, rather. And who knows exactly whether that's true or not. I don't know. It could tie into the Sega stuff, or that person could have just got very, very lucky. Let's go. But it was a fun room all the same. The 110 stuff, I think, and I've said this in streams, I think is completely dried up. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think whatever was going on, I don't think we'll ever find out. I'd love to one day. We'll just have to see. But I think, quite frankly, that's dead and buried. Whatever it was or wasn't, it's game over. We need to move on from that. Whether somebody like Inning Games could partner with WiseNet for a Shenmue 4, I don't know. I really like Inning Games, having worked with them on Air Twister and all the bits and pieces around the release there. I would love to work with Inning. They were brilliant, really accessible, and potentially could work, but I don't know if they've got the capital to do that sort of project on their own. But maybe they could lead the physical release once the digital sales of a Shenmue 4 have gone. Don't know. It's just a thought, again, in my head. So to close this sort of video down, I appreciate I've been rabbiting on for probably the best part of 20-25 minutes now, guys. So thank you for sticking with me if you've got this far, and it is a lot of me just talking. Is Shenmue 4 in development? It's doubtful. There is a part of me that, quietly that it is, and nothing's been said yet. We also know that WiseNet is working on another title. We also know that Yu Suzuki wants to make games that others want to play. Then he's really, really keen for that, as in his end-of-year message. He still holds the passion for Shenmue. That's come through with the interview that he did with Ezra Kobe last year as well. So from that side of things, in terms of the want to do it, that is definitely there. If it's not in development, it's then, I think, how we find a middle ground to get this thing done. If you want to help to get this thing done, guys, as I said in this video, hound Sega, let them know about Shenmue every day, any tweets that you can. Remember, hashtag Shenmue, hashtag Let's Get Shenmue 4, as well as the tweetathons on the 4th of every month with hashtag Let's Get Shenmue 4, hashtag Shenmue Anime 2, and let's keep the noise going, guys. We're in a decent position here. We've probably only had 1 year out of the last 4 or 5 where we haven't really had any Shenmue news. The last big news was obviously the anime. Let's see if we can get ourselves some sort of positive news for Shenmue 4 as we go into 2024. And hopefully towards the end of the year, we might well be celebrating, touch wood, an announcement of Shenmue 4. That would be brilliant, guys, wouldn't it? But we can't do that without the support of the community. So, guys, get off your backside, get out there, get tweeting, and make sure that together we can get a Shenmue 4. So guys, before I quickly close this video, I want to give a shout out to the members who have signed up via YouTube. If you don't know what the membership scheme is, for £2 a month, you just sign up. You get early access to all of the videos outside of the podcast, as we like to keep those separate. We like to do the premieres for that sort of thing. What the money goes towards, essentially, it funds the giveaways, it funds the running of the website for James and I, and it just helps keep things moving for us in terms of the back end and things like that. And thank you to everybody who's gone and done that and gone and contributed to this already. It is very much appreciated, guys. To make it clear, nothing is locked behind a paywall, so you can still access all of our content for free upon the normal release dates. It just allows you to access this thing a few days early if you so wish. So to the members, I'm going to give you a shout out right now, guys. Thank you so much. There's 15 of you. So from the top, I've got Bruce Wayne 937, Survival Spears, Peter Hoffland, Sean Don, Wandering Through Shenmue, Phantom Riverstone, Nova, Bruce Wayne 911, Mike Franz, Manny Figueroa, Master Mo, Nick Hughes, Sean Hastings, Clunky Mage, and William Lovering. Thank you guys for being members. Long may it continue. Any new members that sign up, you'll also get a shout out in all the videos as well, guys. Thank you for sticking with me. It's been a long one, and it's a lot of me talking. I appreciate you dropping in on all the content. Don't forget to give us a like, share, and subscribe on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. You know where you can find us, guys. But for now, guys, have a cracking weekend, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Have a good one.